Showtime put out this documentary that's actually quite racist if you're being objective about it. That talks about how evil white people are and how fragile they are, and they want to ignore their part in perpetuating racism. Frankly, it's just quite ridiculous. If you've seen the trailer, you're here to see my reaction video to it. There are some things that give me hope. So if you can see here, there are 36,000 dislikes on this video compared to 1.4 thousand likes. So clearly, the YouTube population is just understanding that this is garbage. Um, and how am I able to see this dislike? I'm using this Chrome add-on called Return the YouTube Dislike because that dislike data is still there in the Google Chrome API or the YouTube API. It just needs to be accessed and then it can be displayed. Also, the comments, they're totally gold on how racist this is. But let's continue.
I think what annoys me most about white people is when they pretend like they're the victim. What's also annoying is when they kill us.
It is so frustrating that white people can just kill people of color indiscriminately and still be accepted as a part of polite society. So let's look at this FBI homicide statistics page and just confirm what this woman is already telling us, which is that white people are killers. So here we see that 2,900 black people were killed in America in 2019, and of that, 246 were killed by white people, and 2,574 were killed by black people, right? So 8% of black killers were white, but 88% were black. Okay, well, could this woman be wrong? Well, just as a fun exercise, let's go look at the number of black people that kill white people. We got 566 black people killing white people. This accounts to be 17%. So right off the bat, you can look at the data and you can see that the rate of black on white homicide is double that of white on black homicide, right? And if it was a white woman in that chair saying that she is annoyed that black people are killing white people, she would be more right than this black woman. But which one would be canceled? You tell me. You know the answer to that, right? But then this woman's gonna say, "Well, black on black crime is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about systemic racism, white racism, blah blah blah. FBI crime statistics are not even good. The data's not good." Okay, the goalpost is moved. I understand, right? You can't trust the data because it doesn't match your feelings, so it must be wrong. Let's go look at Washington Post police shooting data because I know that's the next thing you're going to talk about. You're talking about, how policing in America is affecting black people, which is leading to all this, bad stuff. So right off the bat, this is probably the best police shooting database out there. It aggregates police shootings from all different departments and all news articles. And so right off the bat, it says 975 people have been shot and killed by police in the past year. So you might be thinking, wow, you see that? This means that 975 black people have been shot and killed. No, that's not accurate. That's people, not black people. Now let's just go to the database and see what we can see from that, what we can glean from the data. So let's select the year 2019. Race, let's go with white first, all right, just to see. So wow, look at this. In 2019, 424 white people were shot and killed by police. Now, how many black people do you think were shot, right? Let's use this as a benchmark. If 400 white people were shot by police, how many black people? Well, it's got to be at least double, right? So let's just go with 800. So let's select 800. Let's select black. And here we see that it was 251 black people were shot and killed by police in 2019. But that's a little bit bizarre, right? Because I thought that black people were the ones being victimized by police the most, but yet we see that they are killed in absolute numbers by about half than white people. Now, you might compare this to the general population and say, well, black people are 13% of the population. Why are they being killed at this rate? Well, we're not going by general population. We need to go by the population that commits crime, not general population. Okay, next thing is weapon, right? Unarmed, right? Because that's the one where everyone's talking about unarmed black person shot. Well, here we see 2019, 12 unarmed black men, or not men, black people were shot and killed by police. Okay, how many white people do you think were shot and killed? At least, let's see, 26 people, right? You might be thinking that it would be half, but it was actually double. So why is it that there are double the amount of white people shot and killed by police, both unarmed and armed, but you can't name a single white person that's been shot and killed by police? And also, a side note, unarmed does not mean not dangerous, right? Unarmed, you could still be a threat. You could still be attacking the officer and overpowering the officer. All right, but why is it that you can name Michael Brown, you can name Jacob Blake, but you can't name a single white person that was shot and killed by police? That kind of gives you a window into how much privilege that Black Americans have, because there's literally the culture is changing because of this misinformation being perpetuated. Legislation is being enacted because of this misinformation being perpetuated.
What is fragile about whiteness when everything has been constructed around it?
These people are so miserable, always trying to find flaws in every little thing, which is not even true in a lot of cases. You have to have an appreciation for this country if you live in it. I'm not speaking as a white person. My parents are immigrants from non-Western, non-European countries. English was not their first language. They learned it when they were adults, and yet they love this country because this country, the reality is, accommodates immigrants that come from different cultures. And furthermore, this man, he would never go and accuse Japan of perpetuating Japanese supremacy for having a society that revolves around the Japanese culture, right? But when it comes to America, they don't see things as American. They just see things as white, when that's not even true.
Every part of who I am has been distorted or criminalized.
So I'm familiar with this woman. Her name is Linda Sarsour. She's a political activist of the left and liar and racist, all in one. So here she is talking about how, who she is criminalized and all that. This is common stuff she's talked about before. She was born in America. She wears a hijab, and she stated that the reason why she wore a hijab is because if she didn't, she would look like a white person, right? So she wants to, let people know at one glance that she's a person of color. This is literally what she said. I'm not making this up. She said she's viewed now as a person of color, and thus what comes with that? Victimhood, right? She can wear that badge of victimhood on her. And so here she is. She frequently talks about how evil America is and all this. She was a Trump hater. But anyway, if America's so bad, why don't you go visit the Arab countries where your family came from, right? You were born in America, but your family came from Arab countries. And this is not a racist statement to say, right? Go see how those Arab countries treat women like you, right? You would never be allowed to speak out. But for some reason, these people like to point out and just say lies that America is the worst country ever. When this woman actually has had a pretty decent life, and she really, hasn't had to suffer that much, and she makes a good living, which is fine. I'm not against that, but she really shouldn't be lying.
Really, just a bunch of white lies.
We're storming the Capitol! You're not patriots. You're ridiculous.
So I'm over the whole January 6th thing. I think this has been pushed too far by the Democrats and by the media. I think it's a much bigger deal than it was. I think all it was just the police officers. They opened the doors, then people just walked in, and then they kind of went too far. I wish it didn't happen, but it happened. But why should the Republicans have to pay a price when the Democrats don't have to pay a price for their extremists? Okay, in the 80s, the U.S. Capitol was bombed by a left-wing radical terrorist group called the Weather Underground. Look up Susan Rosenberg. She was arrested, and guess who pardoned her? Bill Clinton. So I don't want to hear people complain about Trump pardoning January 6th. Okay? Bill Clinton literally pardoned a terrorist who bombed the U.S. Capitol. And besides that, there's so many instances of left-wing terrorist activity, right? When Brett Kavanaugh was being confirmed, they stormed federal buildings so that they wouldn't confirm him. So this is not just a right-wing conservative thing that they do. This is something that the left wing does too, but they get away with it because the media is on their side.
One of the definitions of American whiteness is ignorance.
White people, we are not your problem. You are.
Should white people today feel any responsibility for slavery?
Hell yeah.
White Jesus or black Jesus?
Jesus was not white.
Theography. Ain't no way Jesus walked around with blonde hair and blue eyes.
It just astounds me at how openly racist and full of themselves these people are. I mean, how can they honestly believe that they're on the right side of history? So this woman is saying that, oh, the definition of American whiteness is ignorance. That's just ridiculous to even have that thought. I mean, I think white people are a little bit naive now. They've been so generous and welcoming to immigrants from different cultures for decades now, and just to be slapped in the face by saying like you're ignorant, it's really quite shameful. Also, I do understand that Black people have a different history with immigration here. Yes, that's true. But you know, it's been 400 years since they first arrived, 200 years since slavery was ended, 100 years since civil rights. At what point do you take ownership of your own life and stop blaming others and being the victim? I mean, if somebody can escape communist Vietnam and make a life for themselves here, what's your excuse? You being born in America and knowing the language of this country, you have to start taking your own destiny into your hands. So this guy, you know, he's saying that, oh, you know, Black people, we're not the problem of white people. Well, why is he blaming white people for his own problems, right? This guy, I don't know who he is, but he probably has a good life, right? Why are you? I mean, maybe he had some hardships. I don't know, but why are you guys making this whole documentary talking about how bad white people are? White people are not their enemy either. In fact, this whole video that they made is anti-white. I mean, it's quite shameful. Next, this guy's talking about reparations as if it's funny. Yeah, what about the Great Society programs LBJ enacted, right? That's a form of reparations, right? I mean, we've done so much affirmative action. What more do you want? What more do you want? And even if we did do reparations, do you think that would help? It wouldn't, right? Because there has to be a culture of somebody being, you know, knowing how to manage their money, knowing how to think long term. That can't be fixed just by paying people out, right? You got to fix the culture. You got to get dads to take care of their kids. This is not controversial. This is basic stuff, right? It's not the white man's fault that black men are not raising their kids. Well, you could blame Democrats like LBJ for that, for enacting welfare that did create an incentive for men to leave their women who are pregnant with their kids. But even then, you really cannot be blaming other people. And I want to add that slavery, believe it or not, is not unique to America. It's really part of world history, and you know that, they know that. But they like to fixate on America as the sole evil one perpetuating these bad things. I mean, the reality is white people were enslaved, Chinese people, African people, Jewish people. I mean, there's all, you know, you pick a race, they've probably been enslaved, right? But America fought a bloody war to end it, and they deserve credit for that. This last bit about Jesus, I mean, I understand what he's saying. Yeah, Jesus wasn't European, wasn't blonde-haired, blue-eyed. I get that. I agree with that. But he also wasn't black. But regardless, you know, the whole point of Jesus's message and the gospel, it really doesn't matter what race he is, right? That's not a core component of what the New Testament is talking about. And so even for them to fixate on that, it's just kind of BS.
White culture fears the end of the world. For us as Native people, the end of the world already happened like multiple times.
Symbols and monuments, these are mementos of racism.
Bring that statue down. Put up a TCBY yogurt or something. Everybody can get behind.
The truth has to be told about history.
We have to make sure that these stories are told from our perspective.
There's always hope. You know what I'm saying? We don't give up.
It's about obliterating systemic and institutionalized racism.
This is a wild place, y'all. It's a wild place. I know Harriet and Frederick be up there just like, what is they gonna do?
I meant to address this earlier, but I'll address it now. Like, why should Americans, white Americans, have to pay for the sins, quote unquote, of their ancestors? It's really a bizarre concept, because we're so far removed now. I mean, not every black person in America right now is descended from slaves. Not every white person today is descended from a slave owner. And in fact, America as a whole is just filled with so many people that are just not even part of this equation, because, we always talk about white, black, and Hispanic, but there's so many Americans who don't even fit into any of those categories, like myself. I'm not white, not black, or Hispanic. Um, and so we have this Native American man. He's here talking about how, the end of the world happened for my people. Look, what happened to them, it's just part of human history. The land that he took, the land that was taken from him, his tribe took it from somebody before him. That's how world history has happened, right? You have empires go and take over other empires. This is not controversial when you have, the Assyrian Empire take over the Middle East, but then the Persian Empire come over and take over from the Assyrians. But if it's American Empire doing that in the North American territory, for some reason we think that's controversial. It's ridiculous. And then this man talking about tearing down the statues, it's needed. You know what? Like, personally, I'm also not in favor of having Confederate statues, right? But is the removal of Confederate statues going to improve black people's life? No, it really doesn't matter. But yeah, I do agree we'll take it down. But you know what I also don't want to be put up in its place? I don't want to put BLM leaders, BLM people up on. I don't want their statues to be raised either, right? You got George Floyd statues popping up all over the place. Imagine what happens when people vandalize that. George Floyd, he was not a hero, but you don't want to remember George Floyd for beating a pregnant woman. You want to remember him for being mistreated by a police officer, and how that's symbolic of something bigger. But you'll tear down Robert E. Lee's statue, even though he surrendered to the Union Army and he worked to reunite the country. Oh, you don't want to remember the good he did. You want to only remember the bad. You don't want to remember how George Washington helped create this country. You only want to remember him for owning slaves, right? It's just the way their selection criteria for their own heroes versus other heroes is just absurd, and they're hypocrites. This is the last thing I'm going to say before I end this video. So there's this, they keep talking about how, we need to share the history on what happened from the person of color's point of view. I can agree that when we look at history, we kind of need to look at different perspectives so we can understand what happened, and then we can prevent or mitigate bad from happening again, right? We don't want to repeat bad history. But the thing is, they're so they're so emotionally invested in this narrative that they cannot think straight, and they're just spinning out lies and even analyzing basic data wrong, right? Like, again, as I showed you at the beginning of this video, the whole narrative that black people are being gunned down by white people is just false, completely false. And they're gonna say that we have systemic racism that's holding back black people. It's like, okay, you can blame things in the ether, but it's easier to do that than just take ownership of your own lives, I guess. Maybe because I'm not black or white, I could see this as sort of an outsider. I'm an American, but I'm an outsider. So that kind of gives me what I think is a more objective point of view. But it's really just I mean, I think multiple things can be true. Uh, the race has been a complicated thing in America's past, and it should be taught to young people, right? But I think where conservatives get upset is you want to take that thing that we all agree with and go further and say, now, because America was racist 100 years ago, that means that black people committing disproportionate number of crime, it's the white man's fault. It's like, okay, there's been 2 generations since then, 3 generations. You have to look at other factors, right? But they want to keep it simplistic and superficial and just focus on race as the issue. Okay, so what's going to happen another 100 years from now? because the problem's not going to be solved if you're not focused on solving the problem in the right way and just blaming other people. The problem's going to be here. Who are you going to blame in 100 years? White people, probably, right? Or maybe they'll start blaming the Chinese people. But if you are a business owner and you're trying to solve a problem in your business, right? You need to take an honest look at the data and say, okay, well, why is it that this one other business can compete and why can't I compete? Maybe if I adopt some principles that they do, maybe I can improve my business. Or maybe if let's look at the homicide statistics and say, if I want to reduce the number of murders in the Black community, am I going to fix policing? Am I going to fix white people murdering cops, or am I going to fix black on black crime? Well, if you said white people or police, then you're just perpetuating the problem, right? Because as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, white on black homicides and police killings of black people are such a small percent of black homicides that it won't solve the problem. Even if you made those zero, you would still have thousands of black people being killed by other black people. So if they really want to improve the black experience in America, which I do want black people to thrive and excel, then they really need to rethink a lot of these points that they're considering.